let's talk about NPM, load, express, and all these things, right? So, historically speaking, it was a bit complicated to start working with projects, with JavaScript projects, because you had to manually set up these things. Thankfully, in 2019, and it's been like that for a few years already, because things like Node and NPM. Do you know the difference between Node and NPM? Do you know what Node is? Correct. Node is a system to run JavaScript in the backend. And NPM stands for Node Package Manager. So NPM is a sort of a JavaScript marketplace where you can download and install things, plugins, stuff like that, right? So that quickly became a standard because it was a huge improvement regarding the previous ways of organizing your code. If you've been coding for a while, you may remember things like Grant, Gulp, Power, all the things, right? So they have been mostly replaced by the combination of Node, NPM, Webpack, and all these things. So, what you can see in the screen now, this is the Codeflix anti-patterns repo I created this morning. So I would like to install that locally. And that applies, it goes without saying, to any single GitHub repo. Yeah, so if tomorrow you want to check out any other repo, the process is the same. How do we do that? First of all, you see the green button, right? Clone or download. If we click on the button, you see that it gives us a URL. There are two options, SSH or HTTPS. Do you know the difference between SSH and HTTPS in regards to GitHub?
One is secure shell, which you get through the terminal. I think HTTPS is the browser.
Not really, not really. You can use both protocols over the terminal. The difference is SSH is more secure. In other words, it's able to deal with your SSH key. Do you remember when you set up Codeflix, you had to create an SSH key? Thanks to that SSH key, you can commit and push to your repo without problems. If you clone a repo using HTTPS, the SSH key won't be taken into consideration. And you know the consequences. You know what will happen when you try to push using SSH, using HTTPS? It will ask your user and password every time. GitHub username and GitHub password, which is not ideal. Yeah, that's why in the long term, I strongly prefer to use SSH. Anyway, let's copy that URL. You got a copy button here. So if you copy it, now we can go to a terminal. Yeah, I got a terminal here. And as part of the terminal, I would like to download the repo. The way to download, the correct way to describe it is not, the process is not download, it's to check out. The way we check out a repo is typing git clone and then the URL that we copied from GitHub. Yeah? So if we press enter, it will essentially download. You see, it took maybe 4 seconds, right? It was pretty quick. So now I have that repo locally. And that means I can go to Visual Studio and open it. So let's find it. Dev Codeflix anti-patterns. I select the folder. And then on the left-hand side, I got my repo with my gallery and with my Shuffle component and everything, right? So that means that I can start playing with that. How, guys, do we now play with the app into the browser? What else do we need to do? Every morning, what command do you type every morning? npm start, correct. Let's type npm start and let's see what happens. So, terminal, view, terminal, and now npm start. Oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It throws some errors. cannot find module express? What was that?
npm install.
Correct. Every time you download a repo, you are only downloading the source code, the few files that you managed to create and maintain. However, every modern piece of software has some dependencies. React, Express, many others, right? That's a common rule. Every time you check out a repo, you need to install the dependencies. In other words, you need to, and only once, hopefully, you need to type npm install. So npm install, enter, it will look after all the dependencies of your repo. And that may take longer. That may take maybe a couple of minutes, depending on your machine and how many dependencies the repo has. Does anyone know how Node understand, how npm understand which dependencies are necessary in your repo? How does it know that we need React and things like that? Correct. I've mentioned a few times already a file called package.json. That file is vital in modern JavaScript because in that file we specify few things. Look, dependencies. You see, dependencies represent the external software that we need to incorporate into our project in order to be able to play with it. That's why you can see in my dependencies, I got a list of things. Do you remember the error? It said express not found. Actually, it's the first one, you see? Because here we are telling npm, hey, please, when I run npm install, please install express, so then I'll be able to start the server later on. Yeah? npm install. All right, so then, hopefully, once the npm install process finished, I should be able to run npm start, as some of you suggested. So we'll see if that works to proceed with the following steps. Is there any questions so far? That sounds simple, right? It's always the same steps. Git clone the URL and then npm install. And then that's it. You may get some warnings. That's fine. That's fine. And to be honest, sometimes it's even complicated. That's the previous message. The messaging is sometimes a bit verbose. So Node tends to vomit too much information. Because of that, sometimes it could be complicated to see if the process eventually works or not. However, you will notice that there is a Node modules folder. So by running npm install, look, that folder got populated with many folders on it. And you may be thinking, wait a minute. Okay, you have a list of dependencies, Express, Mongo, React, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Why, instead of 7 folders, you get 700 or 600? I don't know, many more than 7. The process works as follows. Let me find a good place to write that. So if you have an application an application is called Peter. That's the name of your application, right? And Peter depends on React, Express, Mongo, whatever. I only have 3 dependencies, no problem. But in reality, React has some dependencies as well, A, B, and C. And A has a dependency X and Y, and C has X and Z. You get the idea, right? That this is we have a massive tree of dependencies, even to do simple things. That's the price we have to pay to use modern JavaScript. That a very simple project may need 300 megs of disk space. In the 90s, a simple JavaScript project needed half a meg, less than that probably. Is what it is, right? So many dependencies. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And that means that we can now run npm start. Npm start. You cannot see anything, but I'll try to sort it out. Well, npm start. So let's see if it works this time. Okay, it failed again. It failed again. Why it failed again? I don't know. Let's have a look to the error. Right, I know why it failed again. It failed again because I have a file with some sort of passwords that I didn't incorporate it. Yeah, you'll see that once you start dealing with MongoDB, that sometimes you need to play with sensitive data, like passwords, stuff like that. And we don't want to publish that into the cloud. That's why now I will need to populate that file again, but because if I'm recording the session, I don't want to show my passwords, obviously, right? But that's fine. I hope you get the idea, because that's literally the only thing we need. That means the application works. It's simply looking for a password that I didn't create, yes? You'll learn how to deal with this sort of sensitive information as part of the database journey. Task number 26, 27, something like that. All right, so anyway, because that doesn't work, let me do something. Let me open, again, the original Codeflix repo where I had all my anti-patterns and all my passwords already in there. So hopefully that will be enough to progress with the next steps. So this is the same repo, but I got a file here, which I'm not going to open, .m with some database passwords, right? And thanks to that, in theory, now I should be able to run npm start. It doesn't work neither, so let's have a look why. Oh, right, I typed the wrong command. You will also see, starting from task number 18, that in your package.json, generally speaking, we run npm start, but you will see that we'll have to create other commands. A command to run the front end, a command to run the back end, a command to start the database. So we'll work on that list of scripts. In my particular case, because my app has a front end, has a back end, has a database, I created a command called start dev. And my start dev, it will start the database, it will start the front end, and it will start the back end. It will start all the services I need to run my app. You will start dealing with that, as I said, on task number 18, so don't worry about that. But the process is the same, npm start dev, which is the command that I created. And hopefully now, we'll see my Codeflix application running. That will prove that the integration is correct. You know, the first time you try to access is a bit slow, but eventually it will go through, as you can see on the screen. Right? So that means that the process is correct. Any questions? No? Abdul, do you have any questions? Not sure if Abdul is there. Anyway, as I mentioned before, my app has a front end and a back end. When you started working on Codeflix, you only had front end, right? Until task number 17, you only have front end. And front end means the information is hard coded into the user interface. That's not really professional. I don't imagine Netflix hard coding the list of TV shows into the app, right? They have a proper database in the cloud. So they can do backups and things like that, and scale it and all these things, right? So in here we got everything. We got front end, we got back end, and we got database. I don't really care about the communication between the front end and the back end and the database, but I do care about the communication between the front end and the back end. Let's draw a picture describing how that communication works. So I'll try to display some columns. Let's see if that works or not. So we got three stakeholders, front end, then we got back end, and then we got the database. So the way the flow works is, first of all, the front end sends a request to the backend. A request is an HTTP call. In my case, it's called REST/best movies. Again, you'll start creating APIs on task number 18. This is what the front end is this one that triggers the action, right? So then the action goes to the backend, and the backend says, okay, database, please give me the movies. And the database, because our movies are in the database, eventually will return an array of 6 movies. Yeah? So it goes in that way. First of all, the front end asks the backend, and then the backend asks the database. It goes all the way down. And then, because the backend returns to the front end, first of all, the database will return the data to the backend. So in other words, the backend will have the list of 6 TV shows, and then again it will pass that list of 6 TV shows to the front end. And eventually the front end, who originally initialized the action by requesting a list of TV shows to the backend, it will receive an array of 6 elements. And because JavaScript likes arrays, it can iterate, it can loop, it can display a list of elements on the screen. From the network point of view, again, if we open the network panel, and I'm afraid that you remember this morning that the best movies request was invoked like millions of times, right? Because of the infinite loop, but that's fine. We learned this morning how to fix the problem. So I'll try to focus on one of them. So here you can see, look at how it looks like. So the front end first is asking the backend, hey, please give me the list of TV shows. Let me zoom that a bit. Something like that. Give me the list of TV shows, best movies. And then on the preview tab, you can see the result that the backend is returning to the front end. You see we got an array of 6 elements, and thanks to Chrome, we can even drill down and analyze the details of each movie. We got the title, the synopsis, it's similar to what you are doing at the moment, right? The ID, right, for every movie. So that's the way the communication between the front end and the back end works. And technically speaking, how that actually works? Well, first of all, we got the fetch. Do you remember? We talked about fetch this morning. So fetch is the mechanism in modern JavaScript to get data from the backend. Fetch, and then you pass a string with the endpoint. We'll see in a minute what the backend is doing with that endpoint, but that's essentially is an HTTP address. So that's HTTP localhost 3000/rest/best movies. Yeah? Okay. As you can see, I'm not hard coding. I'm not doing that. Even though it will work. Does anyone know why that's not a good thing? It doesn't matter, right? On top of that, why this is not a good, even though it will work, why this is a bad strategy? No, not really. The problem is, if I do that, it will work here in my machine, but as soon as I deploy to Heroku, Heroku won't understand what localhost is, right? Heroku has a different URL. That's why it's considered a bad practice to hard code full URLs into the code. Never do that. Always do it like that. And then the browser will be able to determine the host. If the browser is in localhost, the endpoint will be localhost/rest/best movies. If the domain is www.coldflix.heroku.com, whatever, then the same thing, right? It will be dynamic. So keep it like that. So anyway, the front end is requesting a list of TV shows to the backend, and then, you remember then, means that's asynchronous, it may take a while. Once the data is available, the front end will receive the array of TV shows, and then it can do whatever it wants. Display them, sort them, shuffle, whatever. Yeah, that's up to the front end. And then from the backend point of view, how that looks like. Something like that. This is a bit more complicated because we're doing some database handling, which is probably a bit out of the scope for the majority of you yet. But ignoring the complexity, the important thing to understand is line number 9. On line number 9, we are registering a new endpoint. In other words, this is backend code. Here we said, hey, whenever the front end requests that URL, please return that, whatever that means, whatever is happening here. Here we're going to the database, authenticating many things, right? But in reality, we can do whatever we want here, we have full control. So that's the way the communication between the front end and the back end works. Questions? ERR, that one, that error. Yeah. Again, I'm not asking you to understand every single line here, right? But the idea is that you can register endpoints. Look at what they go at the bottom. Can anyone tell me what's going on line number 16? Yeah, and why? Why are we doing that?
To make sure that we're finding the TV show that's in the database that matches one of the TV shows.
That's correct. That's correct. Look, if I'm on my homepage, I want to get the list of TV shows, and that's all good, right? But if I click on any of the TV shows, I don't care about the others, right? If I refresh the page, what happens if we got 3 million TV shows? Do we need to fetch them all? If you just want to display the details of one, it doesn't make sense, right? So now, look at the endpoint. Not sure if you can see anything. You see? Rest, best movies, slash, and then the ID of the movie that you want to fetch the details from. This is about performance, especially thinking on mobile. If you are using your data plan, you don't want to fetch all the TV shows if you just want to check the details of a particular one, right? So we'll learn all these things. But again, I hope you get the big picture of the way we register endpoints and we communicate front end and back end. This is very important. Also, and last thing for me, you may have noticed that we talk app.get. Does anyone know why get? The question seems stupid, but
It's a type of request.
Correct. Richard is right. We got different types of requests. First of all, get. What do we do? What we are trying to do when we do a get request? Correct. We want essentially to read content. What else? Apart from get, what else can we do with our database? Put. Update. Interesting. Update means you want to edit. You have a TV shows, you notice a typo, and you want to change the synopsis, right? You don't want to get the information, you want to edit it. It was on the other way around. Correct. And what was the name? So the update action, let me use quotes, because this on the left-hand side, let me rephrase that a bit. On the left-hand side, I would like to specify the technical way to describe the action, and on the right-hand side, I would like to describe what's going on. So what sort of operation are we performing? So what's the technical way to describe an update into our system? What? Like a no, it's not an install. You got a text and you want to edit it. That's it. This is called put.
Put, yeah.
Yeah. What else can we do with our data? Delete it. I like it. And what's the technical way of deleting? The technical term is just delete. That was simpler, right? Anything else? Post. Post. What is post doing? Correct. It's okay to read, to update, to delete, but first of all, we need to create content, and then we'll edit, and we'll delete, and we'll do whatever. Yeah, you see the 4 main actions. And these 4 actions are what we call CRUD. C-R-U-D. Why CRUD? Look, C, create, R, read, U, update, D, delete. So you may have heard about that principle, something like CRUD operations or CRUD API or something like that, right? There is another one, but it goes beyond, no, there are a few more to be honest, but they go beyond the scope of this session. These 4 are the main ones. You create the content, and then you can read it, you can edit it, and of course you can delete it. Yeah, the 4 more main actions. And that's why here, look at the API, app.get, we're saying, hey, I want to read, I want to get content. Of course, can you tell me guys, if I do something like that, so what's the message? Correct. Here, that endpoint, update the movie, title, whatever. And if I do delete, pretty obvious, right? We may want to delete a TV show, we do app.delete. That's the way it works. Again, this is just readability. In theory and in practice, we can do whatever we want. I can do app.get and then here delete the movie. So this is just semantics. It's a matter of good practices. That will be weird, right? So I invoke an endpoint using get, but then I delete the movie. But hey, technically speaking, that's possible, right? It's like calling a username Brexit. Hope you get the point. Right, so that's pretty much it from my side, guys. Do you have any questions? No? I hope you learned, first of all, the way you can play with an existing repo, because so far you've been only creating repos, so you've created Goldfish, you've created your portfolio, but one day you may change your laptop, you'll try to start working with a new laptop, and at that time you don't want to create your portfolio again, right? Because your portfolio will be there already on the GitHub. So you want to clone, to download it, git clone. Yeah, that was the first part. And on the second part, I hope you learn, at least from a high level perspective, how to communicate the front end and the back end, which, as I mentioned before, will be very important starting from task number 18 when we introduce a backend server. Anything else?
Sorry, can you just summarize what you mean by NPM? So I'm always confused with NPM sometimes.
Yeah, so when we talk about Node, so Node.js, this is JavaScript running on the backend. NPM.
So is Node an environment, or is it just...
It is an environment, yes.
Okay.
You can run JavaScript in Google Chrome or in Node. It's like a browser without any sort of visual interaction. if you
Okay.
accept the expression.
Okay.
We'll see why Node is important. It's all about security, because the browser is not secure. You can add breakpoints, you can see the source code. You don't want to store passwords into your front-end React components, right? Because other developers may be able to capture them. However, the Node, because it doesn't run on the browser, it runs on server side, is more secure. So the Node is very useful to do things like password handling, encryption, cryptocurrency, all these things. And NPM, that stands for Node Package Manager. So when you install Node, essentially you're installing both. Yeah? And the way to prove that is by typing on the terminal. You can type node -v. It will give you the current version of Node. But you can also type npm -v. Pretty much the same thing. So these packages are independent, but in reality, when you install Node, both got installed at the same time. So npm is the mechanism responsible of installing dependencies into your project. So npm is essentially the responsible of installing whatever you got here in your list of dependencies. So they are very related. That's why they come on the same bundle. But you can think Node like the engine that runs JavaScript, and npm like the package system, the marketplace that downloads the packages that then are run by Node, if that makes any sense.
So is this the same as the npm we go to when we go to the npm website?
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing, of course.
So when we search the npm website, what are we searching for?
Well, it depends, right? I can show you, right? For instance, in my application, and you'll do the same thing on task number 30, is I want to connect with a database, with a Mongo database. So to connect with a Mongo database, I need a driver. A driver is just a plugin that I install in my app to facilitate the process of creating, reading, updating, and deleting CRUD content from the database. So in here, what I had to do is to install the MongoDB driver. Does anyone know how to install new components into your app?
npm install save and
Correct. In the terminal, you can install whatever you want, type in npm, because you want to install a new package, install, and then the name of the package, MongoDB, for instance. How do you know the name of the package? You need to know, right? For instance, about MongoDB, if I go to Google and I search MongoDB Node, you will see on the first link, you see? That's the way. It always gives you the name of the component. npm install MongoDB, yeah? You can ignore that flag. This is not necessary anymore. They haven't updated the docs. So what that means is, please, after installing the dependency, add a new line on my package.json. So if tomorrow a colleague of mine wants to play with that, he or she knows the list of dependencies. But that's not necessary. Starting from Node npm version 5, even if you don't type --save, the package will be automatically added to package.json, which is obvious, right? Generally speaking, when you install a dependency, you want it to be registered. So next time someone else tries to check out the project, they don't mess around with dependencies. They are all listed here. Yeah, so it's all, thankfully today is always the same process. npm install, name of the component you want to install, and then you can import it, you can do whatever you want with it. Does that work, Abdul?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah?
When you did the what did you write in front of the link when you were putting it into
Here, you mean?
When you first
Git clone, yeah. To check out the repo, yes, git clone. You need to go to GitHub, this is recorded on the workshop. Go to the main page, the home page of the repo you want to play with, and then here, the green button, clone or download, you copy it, and then on the terminal, you simply type git clone, yeah, and it will download it. It will create a new folder in the current folder where you are with that repo.
a similar question. What's the difference between cloning and fork?
Clone and fork, that's a good question. That's a good question. When you clone a repo, you are essentially downloading it to your local system. That's it. When you fork it, you are creating a new repo in your GitHub account with the same code. You're creating a copy. Yeah? Here, we're not creating any copy on GitHub. Correct, we're just downloading it. Next month, as part of the team app, everyone will be forking the team app project. We'll learn how to use Git in a more advanced way. We'll learn how to deal with forks, branches,